Viewing and listening discretion advised on this episode. There's some mature themes that we talk through. So just a quick heads up. Thanks for listening.
Just because I don't believe or agree doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Okay, that one I'm super embarrassed about.
Do you like me?
Do I like you?
Yeah.
As an individual or as a podcast?
Just as a person.
No, I like you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't have any interest in appearing to be stronger than I am.
I ain't bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. He gonna lead. You feel me?
How do we love people who see the world differently than we do?
What would it look like if we truly loved all of our neighbors? Could listening to their stories be the first step? This is Seacoast Church, and there's way more to talk about.
All right. This day that we are recording, I still can't drive. So I had a seizure in November, and there was apparently some sort of, I got one test done, but there was a second test that I needed to get done, and both of these offices were supposed to call me. So when I left the doctor's office, I just had in my head, hey, I'll wait for the phone calls, and then I forgot about the second one. So I basically have to get one more test. But I wanted to ask y'all this. I have a friend of mine pick me up from work. He works, I think, on Daniel Island, so it's not too bad to drop me off and then pick me up. If I ever want to, get a little walk in, he'll call me and say, hey, I'm on the way. So I'll say, hey, pick me up at the gas station. So I'll go in there and, get a diet soda or something like that. When I am standing out there in the parking lot of a gas station with my book bag, just standing there waiting, I cannot not feel shady. Yeah. I just feel like a shady person. And I started thinking about it, I was like, what does that say about society when, and maybe I'm bringing this onto myself. Could you understand how I feel like I'm kind of shady?
No,
that doesn't register? You guys?
No, I definitely do. I dropped my car off at Gerald's the other day, and I walked back to the office, and I had my backpack on, and I felt weird.
Yeah,
I did. I felt really weird. Like people were looking at me and wondering, what's this guy doing?
Yeah. Because usually when you see someone walking on the side of the road, you're thinking, wow, that sucks that they have to walk on the side of the road. The reality with you is you dropped your car off, but anybody that sees you and don't know you, they're like, wow, it's not
poor guy.
It wouldn't be fun to walk on the side of the road right now. It made me feel shady.
I'm just laughing at T.
All right, so we've got, I'm going to try to say this name right, Benjamin Ironside Koppin. He is a movie director, and the actress that stars in his newest movie, Pastor's Kid, Courtney Bandeko. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But I thought it was super interesting that some of the content that they bring to the table, I think you will enjoy that. But I wanted to talk to you guys about movies. First question I have is, do you like rom-coms?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm very proud of y'all.
Yeah.
Give me an example of
so
what
many,
you're considering.
so many guys are
Couples
like,
retreat.
It's actually what I would prefer over anything.
There's so many guys that are like, oh, I don't really, blah, 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 blah.
I would.
People
That's my
lie.
preference. It's my preference.
So you prefer rom-coms?
Absolutely.
How about romantic movies, Notebook,
No.
Titanic, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I'm a romantic.
You lost me at Titanic. That thing like 3 hours long.
Yeah. So that's where you draw a line.
I would draw a line there.
It's just you're not interested in watching. Yeah. Mm-mm. Yeah, I think for me, I may not, when I think to myself, especially by myself, this is interesting to me. I'm never going to pick a rom-com by myself, but watching it like with the family or with Priscilla, 5 minutes in, if it's a good movie, it's a good movie, and I love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Y'all know the most devastating love story?
What's that?
If I give you 2 clues, 2000s, and then Tom Hanks, what would be the most devastating love story? This kills me. And I know there's way sadder ones, but how they set this up, it is heartbreaking.
Was it Castaway?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude, that kills me. Oh my gosh, that kills me. The scene from the time he goes into Helen Hunt's house and she has had to move on with her life. She's 7 years into losing who she calls the love of her life. Mm-hmm. She calls him that night too. They embrace, they kiss, and they know we can't be together.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
that was
kills
devastating.
Me. That kills me. You seen Castaway?
No. but it sounds like it's something I should watch. But no.
Do you think that part is pretty heartbreaking?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I forgot. Honestly, it's not a movie that I've watched over and over again. So it's been probably decades.
Yeah. All right. This is going to be real fun because I consider these comedians our generation. I started thinking about it. I was like, I wonder if Tomelex will say, I'm a little further removed from these because you are a good bit young. You're the youngest out of us three, I think, by just maybe weeks.
Weeks, yeah.
And you're 46. And how old are you, Tomelex?
43.
43. Okay. No, you're right there with us.
I'm probably going to know 90% of that list.
Oh, you'll know who all these people are for sure. I just don't know if you'll be like, ooh, these are my favorite. These, I thought about it, and I could be leaving some out, but these are my absolute favorites. And here's one of the biggest qualifications for me when it comes to funny people. And gosh, I make no apologies, but there's no women on this list. I only make no apologies because these are my favorite. I'm sorry that they're males. Well, that kind of sucks, though.
Very revealing.
Now I feel really bad.
Very revealing.
It's okay. You vote for one for president, just not as just straight up comedian.
But these people have the highest probability of making me smile in any given situation because they're just funny, no matter what movie, no matter what scene they're in. And I would say Adam Sandler, Chris Tucker, Jim Carrey, and then I would say these two, every single time I see them, they're funny. Every single time. Will Ferrell and Chris Farley.
Yeah.
And then I would consider this new school, but the third guy for me, where I see him on a commercial, on an interview, on a movie, sitcom, whatever, it's always funny, and that's Kevin Hart.
I was about to say, if you don't have Kevin Hart on that.
Yeah. Well, I don't have him on our generation's set
he's
of
a little new
comedians.
school.
He's more new school, but he is one of the funniest.
Yeah.
Any notable ones that I left off?
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy,
Red Fox.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Now all these people are before
really
Jesus.
old school now.
And you got to think about it. You grew up off of that. I grew up off of Harlem Nights.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I had Della Reese, Red Fox, Arsenio Hall. Like they were all in that one movie. And it was the funniest movie ever.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I wonder if Harlem Nights is like White Guys Dumb and Dumber.
I've never watched Harlem Nights.
Harlem Nights is good. You need to watch it.
Never seen it.
You never seen Quick Shoot Off the Pinky Toe?
Nope.
Bruh. It'll change your life.
Hey, my favorite comedy, and there's some people who are like, I've never even heard of it, and there is a lot of language in it, so don't go watch it if language is something that you don't want to hear. But Life with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, that is my favorite comedy.
Coming to America.
Yeah.
That's timeless, man.
Yeah.
You can watch that today. That is hilarious.
All right, who's one of your favorite actresses? And I'll tell you, I think maybe the best actor of all time is Meryl Streep. I don't know if she's my favorite actress, but I think there may not be a better actress than her.
Favorite actress.
Any of them, just any actress that comes to mind that you're like, yeah, I enjoy.
I don't do. Here's the deal: actors, actresses, male,
You don't
female.
really know
I don't
many
do
other
names a
Yeah.
lot, and so like one that's just coming to my mind. I would say Drew Barrymore.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple of movies.
We grew up with Drew.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, she was in our childhood movie as a
E.T.
child.
Yeah.
You know?
Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites too.
See, I would say Whoopi.
Yeah.
I love Whoopi.
Yeah.
Sister Act Whoopi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
She's amazing.
Absolutely.
All right. Most consistently the coolest tough guy in movies.
The Rock.
The Rock.
Really?
Absolutely.
See, he to me is removed from my generation of, I think 80s Schwarzenegger, Stallone. Stallone, I think, is who I have the most heart connection with because I love the Rocky movies so much. But I put Samuel L. Jackson ahead of The Rock as far as the classic bad tough guy.
Yeah.
You got to put Samuel
man.
L. Jackson up there.
If you watch Standing Tall, if you watch Walking
Walking
Tall,
Tall?
if you watch
Yes.
Walking Tall, there's nobody else, man.
No,
It's
man.
a bad dude.
Yeah.
That man comes in there with a 2x4. Your tail lights out.
That's great. Man.
That's great. I did not expect anybody to say The Rock. So that's probably widely accepted amongst a lot of people, and I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Rock is seen as one of the toughest actors now. Here's one of the big things is as I've gotten older, I've gravitated less towards those kind of shoot 'em up tough guy movies. So I think I left behind that movie scene when he started getting really big.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't even name a tough guy movie that The Rock was in because that's just not the kind of movies I gravitate
Hobbs
toward.
and Shaw, all of the Fast and the Furiouses, Walking Tall.
Walking Tall was really the one.
Yeah.
That really.
Or what's your boy who's like I got a special set of skills.
Why is he my boy?
Nielsen?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Him.
Yeah, that dude.
In that movie.
The Taken movies?
Yeah, he's a different kind of tough.
Yeah, he is.
All right, so we are here with Courtney and Ben. And Ben, I'm sorry if you told me that Courtney was coming, but it was kind of a funny email. I reached out to make sure we were still scheduled. You said, yep, me and Courtney will be there at such and such. And I was like, who's Courtney? So it's good to have Courtney also. But where are you guys both calling in from?
I am in Los Angeles, California.
Nice.
Hollywood.
Do you like it? Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in rural Missouri, actually, and then parts of Denver, back and forth between the two. And then, but I've been in LA so long, I'm kind of a transplant at this point.
I hear you.
And pretty sure I'm here to stay.
Awesome.
There you go. Nothing like Southern California,
Mm-hmm. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm a little bit south. It's there's a wine country area called Temecula, so I'm about an hour and a half outside of LA. So I drive up, do shoots, and then come back down and kind of get out of the city a little bit. But originally, I'm from the Midwest, so Indiana is where I'm from. I was born and raised there, and then hit 18 and came out to LA and did the whole thing. So went to.
Why would you guys ever leave the Midwest? Like,
right.
I mean, there's so much corn. Like, why would you leave that?
Right. What's crazy? Oh, sorry. No, you guys go ahead. You guys introduce yourselves.
Well, I was just going to say this is Lynn Stroy. I speak for her. Nope, sorry, Lynn. Yeah. You can talk whenever. No. You want to say something?
Yeah, so I'm Lynn Stroy, born and raised in South Carolina, and I've been on staff here at our church for about 12 years. And Joey's roped me into doing podcast episodes with him. So I love just sitting around the table and talking to people.
That's awesome.
Yep. And I have been podcasting since 2014. So it's something I've been doing a long time. And I was pastor. I'm still a pastor, but I was pastor of one of our church locations for about 13 years and then transitioned over to podcasting. So it's kind of fun to be able to take my hobby and do it for a living. So pretty sweet deal. Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah. Ben, you were going to say something.
What I was going to say, though, is about the Midwest is being raised, I'm a millennial. And if you do remember, you might remember this too, is the whole hardcore Christian punk scene that went through the Midwest and the South back in like the early 2000s.
You name a band, and I almost guarantee you I'll know who.
Under Oath, Showbread, Norma Jean, Reliant K. But dude, I mean, it was a hot spot for all these like crazy, like we had Haste the Day from Indiana was a Christian hardcore band that was legit. So it's like, dude, I don't know. I feel like the early 2000s being a Christian in the Midwest or the South was not a bad time if you were into like hardcore music or anything like that. So anyways.
So here's a fun fact. I would assume that you've heard of Emory. Have you heard of Emory?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right. So I played in the first Emory show, and then we were all supposed to move out to Seattle together, and I sold them out and said, I'm not going. So, those were my buddies. Unfortunately, sometimes friendships can't last. We had like a bit of a breakup, but yeah, I played the first Emory show in our living room. So
that's amazing. Were you playing Walls back in the day?
It was a super early version of it, not near as good as what they ended up with. It was
nice.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it changed.
That's awesome though.
It changed a whole lot. Yep. All right, so here's what I want to do. I do this all the time, so I got to come up with some variety, even if it's just for me. I've got 5 questions, and now I get to ask 2 people these questions. And here's what I'm going to do is these questions have some speculations built in. So not only do you need to answer the question, but you need to also correct the speculation. Does that make sense? I'll walk you through it. Everything will be fine. All right. So the first question is, do you and your family watch scary movies together? And so for this, you would say, well, it depends on family. I'm not married. I don't have kids. So correct the speculation, then answer the question. We'll start with you, Ben. Does you and your family watch scary movies together?
So I have a wife and 2 kids. So sometimes the wife and me will watch a scary movie every once in a while, but not the kids yet.
How old are they?
So they're 4 and 6, and so they get spooked out by things.
Totally.
But, dude, ever since having kids, so I used to work in horror in LA for a number of years at Lionsgate. And so we had like the Saw franchise and some of the other wild ones that we were dealing with. And I used to be big into horror and all this stuff. And then you have kids and you have to be up in the middle of the night and you're like, I can't do this anymore, man. And then I watched one where like a kid got killed in it. And I was like, after having kids, I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. I can't. And so we've tapped out. I mean, we'll pick every once in a while, like the ones that kind of rise above, we'll every once in a while watch, but I can't do it anymore because when a kid cries at night and you got to go and there's like the bathroom light on and you're like, I can see a shadow of like a creepy old lady or something. You know what I'm saying? It freaks you out, man.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because I used to have a horror movie watching buddy, and my wife, once we started having kids, we have 4 kids. She doesn't even like to watch thrillers, and she definitely attributes it to motherhood, and she can't really pinpoint why, but it's like she doesn't like any kind of movies that make her uncomfortable. So, and ironically, on Halloween we released an episode that basically it was a bunch of Christians around this table who were all into horror movies, and kind of pushed the envelope a little bit because I'd say, what would you say? More than half people that go to this church would probably disagree with what we were saying, including you?
Yes.
You said more than half? Way more than half, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah,
way more than half. And I purposely did it to where we didn't really have the opposing view because I just kind of wanted to dig into horror movies, but looking back, it probably was the wrong thing.
Well, we did a follow-up.
Yeah, we did a follow-up, and Lynn was all over it. Lynn was all over it. All right, how about you, Courtney? By the way, I like your haircut. I like your haircut.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a mess. I cut it myself sometimes, so which I should probably stop doing.
I cut mine by myself also. I've been doing it for like 22 years. It's pretty easy.
So my family's kind of all over. Well, we're all kind of spread out. But I've got a niece and my sister, and they are both very into horror films, and that's all they want to watch with me. And it's because I really think it started when my sister's always been sort of morbid, and so she had my niece read The Shining by Stephen King. My sister's always been into Stephen King, and it kind of started there. My niece was 10 years old reading The Shining and other Stephen King novels, and then now they're both into horror, and that's all they want to watch with me.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy watching it with them, or is it the being with them? Or both?
Both. I mean, because I just like interesting movies, and then I can always entertain myself, even if the movie isn't good. Then I'll have fun roasting it and making fun of it. Like,
you're that person that ruins it for all of us.
I make it better if it's a bad movie. You want to watch it with me.
I feel you for sure. Yeah, We used to have the church that I pastored. We used to have services in a real cool vintage theater. In fact, it's nationally known. And the owner and I are really good friends. And he just recently, in the last couple of years, recarpeted the floor, and it's completely modeled after The Shining's carpet in the hotel, the setting in The Shining.
Awesome.
Yep. All right, Ben. What was your favorite part about college? And what was your favorite sport to support in your college days? So you could easily say, didn't go to college, hate sports. What say you, sir?
Yeah, so I went to college. I went to Biola University out here in Southern California. I didn't really support any sports, but we were in a flag football league, so I guess that counts. So that was quite fun. Me and my wife, before she was my wife, we played flag football, so that was a blast. So
Awesome.
Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. How about you, Courtney?
I went to the University of Missouri Columbia, Mizzou for short. And I was a theater dork. I really didn't watch sports until like my senior year, and it wasn't even college sports is when I finally started to watch the NFL. Nice. I was like, oh yeah, I know football is fun to watch.
Yeah, new idea. This is awesome. Hey, I'm going to tell.
Wow, I kind of get it now.
Right. Hey, so this is actually pretty embarrassing thing to admit, but it's like if no one corrects you in your childhood, you don't know any better. So I probably up until early 30s, I would say your state where you came from, I would call it Missouri. And there was one time where this really good friend of ours, she like caught me and she looked at me and she said, "What did you just say?" Because it was her home state. I was like, "Missouri, where you're from?" She was like, "Why are you saying Missouri?" I was like, "Because that's how you say it, right?" She's like, "No, it's Missouri." But I used to mispronounce
How old were you?
Minneapolis. Oh, early 30s.
Everyone, your whole life.
No one told me. Maybe I didn't say Missouri enough. See, I just said it again. And I would say Minneapolis. Instead of Minneapolis, I would say Minneapolis, like Indianapolis. So nobody corrected me. How am I supposed to know, Lynn?
Hey, I was, like full adult. And when I finally realized OJ was orange juice, because they would say cup of OJ, and I was like, what's that fancy drink people drink? I've never had OJ before.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Never made that connection, so I don't feel bad.
That's awesome.
All right, so we're gonna take a very sharp turn. What is the main foundation of why you have belief that Jesus is the Messiah?
Ooh, interesting. This will be an interesting one. The main reason I believe, I think that's so tricky because I feel like there's logic and there's experience and there's all these different things that kind of go with it. And
I'm already tracking with you, man. I'm already tracking with you.
They kind of like all fit together because I think if you lean to like one on experiential, then that can easily be used in some ways. I think you look at the historical accounts of the Gospels and I lean pretty hard on those. That those are people that knew Jesus and had that, had that relationship. I think, historically, like the majority of historians believe that Jesus of some kind existed. So I think everyone has to wrestle with, was he a teacher? Was he a prophet? Was he, who was he? So I think that kind of sets a bedrock for some things. And then just experiences. I think I have a history of quite a bit of family that have been in very dark places with addiction, alcoholism, everything across the board. And I've seen lives transformed from having a relationship with Jesus. And so it's kind of a mixture of all those things. I think if you lean too far on just experience, then that can easily become like, I don't know, there's no foundation. If you lean just on history, then it becomes just this. And so to me, it's kind of a mixture of all those things, probably the biblical accounts, history, and experiences. And so yeah, that would probably be why I would lean pretty heavily on Jesus.
Dang, the man kills it off of his feet. Yeah. My gosh. Courtney, what's your last name, by the way? Do you have like a Hollywood first and last name?
No, actually.
I'll be the judge.
This is my first,
I'll be the judge of it.
This is my real first and last name, Courtney Bandeko, and Bandeko is how you pronounce it. It's
Bandeko?
So funny because
Courtney Bandeko? That's kind of Hollywoodish.
It is my name. It's funny because early on I had thought about coming up with a moniker or stage name, and I just couldn't think of anything. And I was like, well, I guess this is my name. It is.
Does anybody ever recommend that you come up with a stage name, or it's up to you?
Actually, it's so funny you thought of that. So I, at some point, a couple of years ago, wanted to change my name, my actor name, and I talked to my manager about it, and he was like, "Where's this going?" And I was like, "Really? It's because like there's some sort of like anonymity because at the time, like my phone number and all that stuff. It was easily Googleable. And I was like, oh, wow, it is way too easy for people to find me right now. And so it was really, I was exploring that, but then, it's kind of set in stone at this point.
Yeah.
Really cool. Really quick, I'm going to call Courtney out, is that when talking about horror, is she was actually a pretty big component on a horror TV show called Legacies that ran for a handful of seasons. And she was a pretty big deal, not going to lie. So I'm just going to call that. She's got a little fan base and some people that just love her and love her character. So when you talk about horror, you played a werewolf on the show?
A werewolf.
Yeah.
I think I'm really going to do a lot of werewolfing because the werewolf was CGI, which was so sad. I was like, "What do you mean you're going to dress me up in a werewolf suit?" What?
And I will say, do you guess people's ages, or you stay out of that?
I don't.
She is a lot older than she looks.
I don't guess people's ages because I don't know that it matters.
I didn't say it's like it matters.
I know,
it's just
but
interesting.
But I don't like look at people and be like, oh, I bet.
But
they're
it's fun.
this
It's
old.
like a game.
Okay.
All right. So
If you
guess.
say so. So guess.
How about you, Courtney? Belief in the Messiah. Do you believe in the Messiah?
So that's a very interesting question. So my spirituality is sort of a funny one. So I consider myself, a student of all of it, because I think it all ultimately is talking about the same thing. And so when you say Messiah, I think if we're talking about, some divine energy that's all looking out for us, then absolutely, I absolutely believe in that. And then, I think when we say God, I think that word just brings me personally a lot of comfort. When I'm sad, when I'm down, when I need some hope, I think we do live in a, Christian culture. So God's the word. And then, it just sort of, when you're seeking comfort, when you're down, when you're like really hoping, when you're happy, it's just one of those things. But you could call it, for me, you could call it anything. Like, if you wanted to call it, Allah, it's the same thing, I think.
Gotcha.
What was really cool is, I think, here we made, a Christian film that's dealing with somebody's testimony, a real life testimony. And the whole time we're trying to keep it this kind of very grounded and authentic and raw and real. And I think it was really cool having, like, a lot of our actors had this experience of being raised in the church, kind of like stepping away from those beliefs and discovering wherever they're at now. And it was really helpful to kind of have, this team. And we were just all very open about our experiences and our shared experiences. Mm-hmm. And so it kept us honest as we were making this film, that we're like, are we straying too much in things being overly sympathetic, where it's like, oh, we just assume that this is a good thing that she's having these experiences? Or are we grounding it in a way where kind of this Christian journey or this faith journey or this hope journey is earned and feels honest? And so it was really cool kind of sharing that experience with these actors, that everyone was just so open to be willing to share, here's where I'm at now, here's where I was raised, this is what I went through. And yeah, man, so
that's cool.
Courtney, for you, how does it impact you personally, like walking through that and walking through someone else's story? Like, does it have a personal impact, or are you able to become the character and then step out of it and it not affect you personally?
That's an unbelievable question. Hold up. I got two more. I got two.
We're jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Lynn's awesome. That's a great question, but I got two more questions. Next one is, are you nervous and excited, nervous and can't wait to get through this, not nervous and annoyed by these silly questions, or not nervous and wondering, Seacoast pays you for this?
I'm excited. I'm not really nervous. I'm just excited to chat.
Not nervous, Courtney?
Like presently, my current emotional
presently.
state.
Presently,
I'm having a great time. So I feel like, is there an option of none of the above?
Good. No, that's what I like to hear. I want to know if you have texted Ben at any point saying, "What have you gotten me into?" Exclamation. All right. So my last question is: someone gives you $1,000 and they say, take off work today and do only things fun for you. They say the money has to be gone by tomorrow. So you could theoretically buy something that you really want for $1,000 and then spend your day doing whatever you want as long as it doesn't cost money. But I'm giving you $1,000. You have to spend it today. Go have fun. What's one scenario that you would enjoy?
Disneyland, done.
Boom. That was easy.
I would love to take my friends out to a really nice restaurant.
Ooh.
That's pretty cool.
Because I am a little bit of a foodie. I don't need it because I'll eat a food truck. But then I do also like really nice restaurants. So it'd be cool to like take a few friends out, treat.
Heck yeah.
And then, if anything else, if there's anything left over, we'll just go shopping at a cool store.
I like it. All right. So to get to Lynn's question, why don't you guys give us a little snapshot of Pastor's Kid? And I want to go ahead and just get this out there to our listenership. I don't think this is like a Fireproof Facing the Giants sort of vibe. This is an actual R-rated movie. And so tell us about that. That's kind of a culture shock to a lot of our listeners, I would imagine.
Yeah, so essentially, after working in LA for a number of years, I found myself working at a church down in Orange County and scrambling one Easter to try to get a testimony together for a testimony video to play one Easter. A friend of mine offered to share her testimony, and so I was the video producer. So we filmed her testimony, and basically what came out was this story that I had no idea that this was her journey and never would have known. But basically, her mom was an alcoholic as she was growing up, and so she had to raise her little brother. They were a very wealthy family. Her mom was a functioning alcoholic who made very good money, worked a very nice job. But she's like, as a kid, I'd have to wake my passed out mom up to take me and my brother to school or to get to work. Years later, her mom, becomes a Christian, gets clean, becomes an executive pastor at the church. And so she says, here I was, this kid basically raising my little brother, waking up my mom. And then all of a sudden she becomes a Christian and an executive pastor at the church. And everybody's praising her for being this amazing conversion story while no one is acknowledging my pain, that I was the one that had to be the parent in the room. I had to do these things. And so she's like, essentially, I felt like God didn't see me. I felt like the church didn't see me. And so I did everything I could to push all of them away. Went off to college, up in San Francisco. She said it got so bad that it was to a point where she's like, I thought I would never talk to my mom again. She's like, while in college, was straight A student, but got into the drug and party scene, started selling cocaine, which was just wild as she just would do that to make extra money. And she's like, I would do it every once in a while, but I wasn't an addictive personality. So that's what made me a good seller. And basically that's kind of our story is something happens in our film that forces her to reconnect to her mom. And then these triggers start happening in her life. She's finding that she's medicating with partying, she's medicating with drugs, and those aren't working anymore. And so all throughout our film, we're kind of following her. It's kind of a day in the life of film. We're kind of following her in the mundaneness of her life as these things are triggering these flashbacks that she can't hide from anymore. And so ultimately, her mom invites her on a trip to Sri Lanka at the end of the year as kind of this church trip that she gets to go on for free. And she's like, for some reason, I had kind of hit a rock bottom and decided to go, and basically has an experience there that could possibly change her life. The movie kind of leaves it open-ended. But the whole goal is when I heard that story, I was like, I felt like it was so relatable for not just pastors' kids, but for anyone who's seen hypocrisy in the church, anyone who has experienced, hurt from Christians in one way or another. There's, the whole thing that was going on even a few years when we were filming it was the In Church 2 movement, where you're finding abuse that has happened within the church is starting to come out. And so this was a film that I felt like, or a story that I felt like everyone could see themselves in some way. And the goal was when we made it, you see a lot of Christian movies water things down, or they skip over things very quickly. I've seen a Christian film where someone has cancer in one scene and then God heals them and they're all fixed, just a scene later. And there's no trials of well, what if God doesn't heal cancer? What happens if you do have to go through it? And so for me, I was like, what if we just made a normal movie? If the normal Hollywood system made a movie about this story and didn't carry the baggage of it being a Christian film, what would that look like? And we did that in order to honor her story and not water down the journey. I wanted to make it so that almost the entire 90-minute runtime of our film is God slowly breaking open her heart. We're not just like, in a traditional Christian film, I always say, she'd be a drug addict in the beginning of the movie, and then minute 15, she would be saved and clean and perfect, and then she'd be off in another country, like saving children or something. And it's like, in our film, I was like, no, I don't want to shortchange this process of how long it took God to break open her heart for her to have some of these realizations. And so basically, we felt like we need to make it the most honest we can make it. And sadly, in drug culture, they use potty words. So we use potty words in our movie, and the goal that I keep trying to tell people is like, the goal is not to glorify these cultures or what they're going through, but to show the reality that God steps into this darkness for us. He's pursuing us in the darkness. And I think sometimes when we clean up our content so much, it seems like, Kirk Cameron wasn't too bad before he had his faith experience in this Christian movie. So it's like, I can't see myself, because Kirk Cameron as his heathen self in a Christian movie is already better than I am. You know what I mean? And so that's where, for me, I was like, we need to just tell the story and not be judgmental about it. Like, it's been funny, even in some of our reviews, someone said, it feels like a very agnostic film in that it just won't put somebody in a box. I just didn't want to go in and be like, oh, these are druggy people, they're bad people. It's like, there's good and bad things that they have as their friends in the drug culture, and then the church people do some bad things, but then there's also redemption for them. I didn't want to put anyone in a box or try to force a message down someone's throat. And yeah, I mean, that's Pastor's Kid. So it's just a raw, honest film. And I think Courtney and our team did a really good job of all of us went in with the same intent of, let's just make a normal movie that talks about faith in a real way and not try to ham-fist it on either side.
Gotcha.
We could have easily been the church-bashing movie, or we could have easily been the, God's Not Dead type, film. And we were just like, we need to live in the middle between those.
That's a great snapshot. That's a great snapshot. And it's funny, I make fun of myself. Like, I kind of gravitate more towards, when it comes to what we would call Christian movies, Fireproof, Facing the Giants, I kind of like, it's kind of cheesy for my taste. I cry every time, though. Every time. It doesn't matter. I won't,
And that's what drives me crazy is that it's like, you look at Fireproof, or even I use God's Not Dead as a good example. Like, the basic premise of God's Not Dead, right, is it's like Christian student versus atheist professor, right? That's the like basic idea. And I'm over here just like, you think about how if you did that like a Good Will Hunting type movie, where it's like, really digging into this debate and allowing it to be this thing that maybe at the end, the student doesn't win over the teacher, or the teacher doesn't win over the student, but they grow to respect each other's point of view. And they get coffee, they become each other's favorite teacher and favorite student. It's like, to me, I'm like, that is like an Oscar-worthy movie that could be so powerful. And you just see it where it's like, and again, it's touching people. So who am I to like, I'm not like critiquing or bashing it anyway, but I'm just like, it's a great concept, but we just need to dig deeper instead of just allowing things to be so surfacey. That would be my one critique, is it just feels more surfacey when it's like, great concept, just dig deeper in it, and it could reach even more people. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Anyways.
So I'm going to fit in a question before we move to Lynn's. Courtney, when this role was proposed to you, did you have to think about it, or you're like, man, this would be great? How did that connection happen?
Oh, I say this all the time, that the first real tether that happened between my heart and this movie was a conversation Ben and I had, and I, knew theoretically and intellectually what the movie was, what he was trying to accomplish, and then I asked Ben, I was like, who's this movie for? And then he told me this story of a family member that he had who didn't feel worthy of God's love or love, period. And that was the first thing, the universal thing that I resonated with. And I think everybody can resonate with, the feeling of not being enough, of not deserving of that self-loathing of like, what's so wrong with me? Am I the only one? Mm-hmm. And then, so that's really when it happened. I said, oh, wow, that's Riley's story. That's everybody's story. And it's her journey to, really seeing that, hey, she's not so bad. Mm-hmm. I'm not so far gone.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Lynn, why don't you re-articulate your question?
So from that,
Sorry.
15 minutes later, how did her story impact you personally, or did it impact you personally as you were walking through making this film and even afterwards?
That's an amazing question. So, gosh, this is going to be a really, really long answer. So
Let's hear it.
So for me, my first interactions with a character are, who are they? Who am I? How do I get in there? How do I find that person in me? And then quick segue. And I think when you go that deeply into a character and you spend that much intimate time with them, at the end of it, when you're sort of saying goodbye and unpacking and letting a character go, you do have a choice of what to keep. And I'll tell this quick story. The first time it ever happened was high school. And I grew up with I was raised by a single ex-military dad. And I was basically a boy, hunting, fishing. I never wore the color pink and I never wore high heels before. But then I was cast in Steel Magnolias playing Shoba Eatonton Latry.
Oh, wow.
Pink all over the place, girly, all this other stuff. And then I was 16 when I was cast in that. And then from that point, from there I got to explore hey, wow, I do have this femininity in me. And then I maybe it's not so bad to wear this. I was afraid of the color pink. I was repulsed by it. I didn't want to, so there's an example. I got to choose to keep this feminine side that I discovered. Not keep it, but I found it. And so hey,
yeah.
And then the same thing happened with this. I said, who? Sorry,
I just said that's neat.
So, yeah. And so I said, who is Riley? Where am I? And then really, it's so funny. And I've told Ben this, that I think when I was very young, so a lot of cynicism toward the church had settled into me. And then I encounter Riley, and she does want that connection with the community, with the church, with Jesus Christ. And she does, and that's what she's struggling with. And I said, oh, well, that's the first thing I have to dismantle, is that all that cynicism and all that, the years of, pushing it away and all that. And so to remotely live this other person's journey, because she does. She doesn't have that cynicism. And, I don't think she's, for me, I never thought that she was cynical quite yet. That hadn't set in, because she still had that desire, and you see it the whole way through. All you see is just this wall, this but you see the desire the whole time. And then, but then living through it, what I got to keep was this openness and this love and this humble sense of being welcome into this community that I hadn't been a part of. And so it's so close to me. It's so dear to my heart. And then now I see it. I see, and I'm a deeply spiritual person in my own way. And then now I see so much everything that Jesus Christ and the church does for people. Like you said, Ben, lives get changed around. Alcoholics Anonymous is rooted in Christianity. And, it's just, I see it.
That's beautiful.
That really is.
And then another thing that I kept was the praise and worship music.
Yeah.
Well, we have the most famous worship song writer grow up here at Seacoast. So I don't know if y'all have heard of Brandon Lake, but he's a hometown hero here.
Well, that's at least I'm glad you did this movie at this point in Christian music history, because you may not have kept that. in a different decade.
My favorite, God, she's beautiful, beautiful voice. Amanda Lindsay Cook or whatever.
Amanda Cook. Yeah.
Asking the wrong person.
Yeah, it is.
Is that her name? She beautiful, like this. And then it's just I would also watch live performances, and then I went to church, and I would see these people singing their hearts out, this beautiful music in the name of Jesus Christ, singing from the bottom of themselves, and it's something that's just irrefutable, and that's something you can't unlearn, you can't unsee.
Y'all, going into this conversation, I didn't have a whole lot of expectation because I just didn't know a whole lot about you. I didn't even know Courtney was coming, for crying out loud, but this is just so awesome. I'm loving this. So I thought that maybe we would have some fun with, and Courtney, obviously, I'd appreciate your input. A lot of these questions will kind of be based on through the lenses of Christian faith. Do you think this is acceptable? Or, are there any moral issues when it comes to what you portray? Because I think, Ben, that's something that you actually enjoy talking about.
I love it.
Yeah, for sure. Courtney, please chime in anytime, though. I think that you bring a different perspective than what most of our listenership is used to. I was thinking, so first of all, that horror movie conversation that we had, Lynn was very much so adamant that there are moral things and that there is no good reason to watch someone get cut up by a knife, right? I mean, pretty much. Right. Is that a good way to articulate?
That's a good summary.
So I thought of some different examples, and one was romantic scenes. First of all, I think it's really interesting. I personally would be uncomfortable, and it's not a trust deal, but like if my wife Priscilla was an actress and she a make-out scene, oh my gosh, that would drive me crazy. Because I mean, it's like one of those things, like you can be attracted to other people, and I mean, it would be really weird for her to be like, yeah, I really enjoyed that kiss. I mean, she's never going to tell me that, and I'm just, always be wondering. I mean, boyfriend, husband, would you be uncomfortable?
It would make me. That's the one thing, and I've always loved movies. I think the older I'm getting, the more sensitive I'm getting about it. Even like I used to like watch anything and not care, and now I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And I do that even more if I see something that is quote unquote Christian, and I'm like, oh, are those actors married? Like, how do you kiss somebody else? Like, where's the line with that?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Lynn. Would you be comfortable with a Christian actor in an implied affair? So it doesn't show anything. It's a Christian actor playing the character of someone who's cheating on his wife.
I think it is the character. I mean, I think it. I wouldn't be. No, I wouldn't have a problem with it if you're not seeing anything. I think if this is the question for me. Is it portraying a story, and we're trying to tell a story, and what do we need to show in telling that story? And so that's where like the intimate scenes, the making out, the sex scenes, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think you can imply that that's where it's going without it going there, without the actors actually having to have physical contact. And so I would say if you're telling a story and the story is infidelity, but you're not celebrating it, I don't have a problem with that. But I think I'm always asking the question, is this necessary with anything, whether it's violence or romance or whatever it is? Like, is it necessary? What is the value of it?
Sure. So, Ben, would you be comfortable in directing a scene where it was a sex scene was not only implied, but you actually showed some stuff? We'll say, R-rated level.
Yeah. No, I think what's really cool is, and I'll preface this. So I've had these conversations ever since going to Biola, because Biola is a Christian college. And so we had a film school within the college. And so something that drove me crazy is that we didn't really have these discussions of, what was too far, what was not too far, how do you handle things as Christians? And I think ultimately where I landed on is I can have my conviction, and I'm not going to put it on other people. I think actors need to decide, filmmakers need to decide for themselves where their conviction is. But the goal would be is that there could be a level of accountability. I think especially with sex scenes, I think, Paul has a verse, and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it talks about how, all other sin is outside the body, but sexual sin is against the body.
Yeah.
And so I do believe there is a kind of a differentiation with that one a little bit, but more so I would argue What is the intent behind what you're doing? How are you filming it? Because for me, it's not just the content that's being put out. It's what are we doing on set? How are actors feeling on set? Like, I'll just tell you a reality is we have a friend who's a very devout Christian actress. When she models and does things, sometimes they're like, there's no changing room. You need to just go change in the corner. And that in front of the crew as they're walking all around, she's had that experience multiple times. And that's just a given. That's just like the basis of like, you're going to have to do that sometimes. And it was like, no, it just is accepted. That's what you have to do. So that's where we kind of get into this thing of like, the industry, the film industry isn't really there to like make you comfortable. And I've had actors friends, say like, I agreed to do a sex scene and I said, you could take off my clothes up until my underwear. And then they're filming and the director goes, take her bra off, like yells from the other room. And she's like, thankfully the other actor didn't do that. And I would sadly say, the majority of, and I'm not an actor, so I can't speak on this because I haven't been in that environment, but I would say the majority of the time it's people abusing those situations and pushing things further than they should. I won't say majority, but I just have heard a lot of those stories. And so for me, my wife and I have talked about the line we have drawn, and it's like, we've had an implied rape scene in our films before. You don't need to sit there and experience it and see things, but you can imply things without needing to show it. There's a show called Handmaid's Tale that was filmed, and it's so funny seeing now a lot of this stuff with female directors coming into the film world more. The way these scenes are shot is very different than when men were kind of running the thing. And not saying that men still aren't, but there's a scene in Handmaid's Tale where a woman is raped, and it is not exploiting the actress. It's not, I don't believe, I believe there was conversations leading up to how they were filming it. There was no nudity, yet you felt every moment of what was going on. And so that's where I lean heavily is I don't think you need to show skin to imply a sex scene. I don't think you need to show skin to imply a rape scene. I think you need to make sure the actress and everyone is comfortable with what you're doing and not be pushing them and exploiting them. Because I kind of have this line of like, too many people use the term art as a way to exploit people. And I would say there's a distinction between art and exploitation. And so if you're making art, I think making sure that you're being held accountable or that you're all in the same, agreement on what you're doing. Exploitation is pushing people outside their comfort zone and forcing them to do things they don't want to do. And so that's kind of for me, like if we a good example is we had a friend who that we knew that was an ex-prostitute, right? She was a Christian. She had been a prostitute, drug addict. She was telling her story. We were talking about developing her story as a film. And we were over here, my wife and I were working on she was working on a book. We read her book. And we're kind of like, how do we tell this story while not giving into the exploitation of having people watch it? And I don't want to say struggle, but you get what I'm saying, where it's like, are we adding to perpetuating what she went through, or are we telling this in an honest way? And I think that that's something everyone has to wrestle with. For us, that one scene was that as a child, she had seen hardcore pornography. And that was kind of what had kicked, like as a very young child. And that's what kind of kicked off some of this journey, is that she had never forgotten that. And we're over here like, this is an essential part of her story. How do we show this while also protecting a child actor that might be in that scene? You get what I'm saying? And so, and then my wife and I have even been like, are there just some stories that don't translate well to film that should only be in the written form that maybe, and if you're so anyways, that's, I know it's a roundabout question. I think ultimately every Christian has to wrestle with their conviction on where they land, but I do not at all support exploiting people in any way, shape, and form. And I would say that happens, sadly, within all forms of the film industry. And so I think it's more bold to sit here and talk to an actress and say, how do you feel comfortable portraying this? What makes you feel safe? And build the scene around that instead of saying, take her shirt off, take this off. And I think that happens far more. And I'm going to backtrack that. I think the culture is shifting. There's even a famous quote with Henry Cavill recently where he was on a film and he's like, I don't know why we shoot sex scenes, guys. Like, I don't get it. And then even I think there's a whole statistic that Gen Z or one of they're like, they don't want sex scenes and stuff in their films anymore. They want things to be, it's like you can imply all you want, but it's like, we just don't need to see it anymore. And I think you even look at the HBO side of things, and there is a quota where they're like, hey, we need this amount in here to get our viewership, so put the nudity in there. And it's like, again, to me, that feels very exploitative and not artistic.
Yeah.
So, for us, we've drawn the line that we don't do nudity. We won't do explicit sex scenes. Things can be applied. That's kind of where we land on stuff. So
this might be kind of a crazy question. But even you saying like quotas of having this much in a film or in a show to have their viewership. Do you feel like in some of those the goal of it isn't the story, but it's because I imagine like if someone's craving that thing, that's really an addiction, or that like I don't want to use that word lightly, but like if you're just giving somebody something they crave, like what portion of the industry would you say are telling stories versus just like giving people what they crave?
Right. Well, and that's where it's like, I even had someone ask me recently, they're like, is there an underbelly of Satanists and pedophiles that run Hollywood and blah, blah, blah? And I was like, from at least my experience, I would say no. But there is the film industry is all about making money and marketing. And so you can want to tell the greatest story you want to tell in all time. But if the audience isn't going to show up for that, then they don't care. And so that's where it's like, it's all about money. It's all a business. Whatever is hot right now is where Hollywood is going to lean. And so that is one of those things that they're like, we know our HBO audience or whoever audience wants this stuff. So whether it matters for the story or not, we're going to put it in there because it's marketing. It's marketing to, are they going to be talking about this scene around the water cooler on Monday? It's like, so that's where it's hard. And I think you're seeing more and more. What I love is actresses standing up and saying, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Even actors, there was some guy who, I'm quoting all this stuff, but just do homework on your own. But there's some guy who was on a pretty predominant show where he was hooking up with a lot of people in the show. He got married and he went to the writers and said, hey, can we just like, I don't care. I'm not saying change the character, but can we just not shoot these scenes as much? Because now I'm married and I want to protect that marriage. And the writers said yes. And so that's where it's like, I think we're seeing this beautiful shift where people are standing up and kind of sharing that there's kind of a line here, and not that it needs to be a fully like, here's a wall, I'll never do anything, and but it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong saying, hey, here are some guidelines that to play within. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. Yeah. Courtney, am I operating from a misconception when I reflect on the prospect of my wife being an actress and making out and me being super uncomfortable with it? Like, I would imagine for actors and actresses, it's different than how I'm probably imagining how it feels and how it plays out. Like it's a job. I mean, but would you say that it's very mechanical?
I wouldn't say that. So Ben said something, and I like the talk about, the story. And then what is the intention behind it? And then it really is, I think, case by case basis, and because we're walking a delicate line, and it's always about instinct and taste, what really and like awareness of the impact that the depiction of something would have. As while I do think it's important to another line that we walk is it's important to be provocative without being shock value. And I always say the litmus test for provocative is it getting somebody to think productively, and whatever that means. If it's getting somebody to really think, then that's provocative. And I do think that's important. Shock value, it's empty. Mm-hmm. It's empty. It's just sort of like and then you forget about it. You're just like sort of poking at somebody, and then it really hasn't impacted them in a way that I think art can. And then, but when if it comes down to this is necessary for the piece, like the piece won't have the impact without it. If there's a real argument for it, then yes,
Yeah.
But then, like, is it mechanical? Like, if characters are interacting in such ways, I might be crazy about this because I'm always like the story is above everything. And then if the story is important, if the message important, and the impact is important, if all those pieces are there, I'm offering whatever needs to be done. And then because it's really, all the physical stuff, because it's just there. But for me, what's more vulnerable is like the emotionality and the thoughts of the character. That's for me. That's what's more vulnerable, because I've seen, for example, Ben, those kinds of like the rape scenes, in movies that don't show skin, that don't show it. I feel like there's the other Boleyn girl with Natalie Portman. She has a scene like that, and this is the frame. I think you see him behind her. That's it. But this is the frame, and it's all in her face.
Right. It was the same way. Handmaid's Tale did the same thing. It focused. It made it about her and her experience instead of let's go wide shot and oogle what's going on. It's like, no, this isn't about what's happening here. It's about what's happening like to her. Mentally.
Yeah, it's not her body. That it's it's her body that it's being done to, but it's more everything else that it's being done to. I'm on a tangent on like the question is it mechanical? Great. I don't really know if it's so much mechanical as it is just, hey, I've made this pact to make this thing, and if everybody's had this conversation and this is that line, this is where it is, then we're all on the same page. And then it's so funny, that director that you're talking about, Taker Brav, that's so unprofessional, because in my experience, and thank goodness this is my experience, that it's all talked about. Every single aspect is talked about before. And then I think that's even a rule now. I think some of the contracts language has changed. Like it has to be solidified, I think 48 hours. I might be wrong about the hours, but everything has to be solidified like 24 to 48 hours before the shoot day. And then there is no changing it, because if you want to change it, you have to push your shoot day. Now, I mean, in union, because then there's other stuff.
And that's the beauty of, I think, where our culture has shifted is now they have intimacy coordinators, or at least it's more thought through. Whereas the one friend I was talking to, that was probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, she shot that scene and she just had a horrific experience where she's like, thankfully I talked through it with my acting partner and he didn't do it despite what the director said. But she's like, you get on set and you feel like you don't want to be the one, and they'll even say this, that you don't want to be the one holding everyone up. You don't want to be the one that's the cog in the wheel, with all this production going on. And I think that's really sad. But the beauty is more of these stories have come out, and I think the culture is shifting, which is great.
Yeah, then I always encourage this, like actors with partners who are potentially having to do something like this. I think it's really, really, really professional to loop the partner in. Say, hey, husband, wife, I'm doing this thing. The story is important. How do you feel? And then do you need to talk to my scene partner? And then you make a real pact with your scene partner. Say like, look, we're acting. We're telling this story. It's going to feel real between action and cut. At the end, we're going to be buds. And then I know who I am. I know who my partner is. You know who you are. Just to really say everything out loud, and just to make everybody, including the partners at the other end of it, a part of the whole thing. So nothing's mysterious. Like nothing should be mysterious. It should all be like, look, this is what we're doing. This is why. And then that's the best way I've found to solve any sort of like potential weirdness or confusion, is just say, hey, this isn't confusing. I know who I am. We're doing a thing. We're doing a job that's very important to all of us.
Yeah. Cool. Ben, what you depicted is a pretty demeaning thing. These women having to just like change, like off to the side, sort of. Courtney, do you feel like your experience in the filmmaking industry has been favorable when it comes to how you're treated by males?
I feel very lucky that, at work, I have been very respected. I've never had to change in front of crew. And then, even in intimate scenes I've been in, very close set, and then when it came to like putting the shirt back on, I remember clocking the camera people had like turned away. Because they were like, whoever had to be in the room was in the room. And then during the resets or whatever, even if they couldn't leave or whatever, they like were very respectfully like turned away. They had to, work the camera, but, so I feel very lucky in the way, in my, working experiences but I've also never worked in fashion. I'm not a model. That's a whole different section of the industry that I've just never been in. So I don't know how models are treated.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad, very unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Lynn, you got anything you want to work in?
Yeah, this is so fascinating. I'm loving this conversation. What is it like for both of you, just working in an industry where there's such a diversity of beliefs? And so even Ben, for you going in and you and your wife knowing what your goals are, knowing what your standard is, knowing what you are and are going to do, but knowing that there are a number of people in the room. And when you have actors and actresses that are range the spectrum, and you might have crew, I love that the cameramen turned around, to show honor to you, Courtney. And you might, you just have a range of people in there. How do you balance that? And I agree, Ben, we can only live for ourselves. We have to live out what we believe. But how do you balance that in your workplace, which all Christians have to do that. I worked in a law firm before I worked for the church. And so you're always around people who have a different set of values than you. How do you manage that tension and honor the people that you're working with who are working for you, and vice versa when you are in those environments?
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a Christian, I feel like it's just not being a jerk. I know it sounds silly, but it's just there are so many directors that so I work predominantly, the way we pay the bills is I work in beauty and cosmetics. I shoot a lot of beauty spots and things like that. And then we do, our films every year. We'll shoot an indie film every year. Me and my wife will. And so Pastor's Kid is one of those films that we did. But, normally I'm DPing and directing in the commercial in the beauty space. And so, that's been the biggest thing, is just not being a jerk. It's just models come to the scene and they're nervous and they're scared. We had one model that was tearing up one time because she had anxiety. And so I went and noticed and got her a ping pong, tennis ball. We use tennis balls sometimes to guard our stands. And I gave her one and she just started ripping it and playing with it. And she was fine after that. And, and just being silly and fun, I'm very much married and have kids. I'm a dad. So on my computer, I've got my kids. And so when models step in, they know exactly who they're getting. I'm a married dad with kids. I'm not going to be we've had people get kicked off sets who are flirting and hitting on the models or wanting to take them for private photo shoots and stuff. And that has happened. And I've had to have producers come and talk to certain people and kick them off or not bring them back. And so that for me is, it's just don't be a jerk. And the same thing, I've worked with jerky directors who are just mean and not nice. And they think they need to be this dictator to get what they want, when really it's if you just explain verbally and articulate it to people, everyone's on this. No one wants to make something that sucks. Everyone wants to make high quality, something great, no matter what you're on. And so why can't we all just be a team working towards that, instead of this I had one guy that basically had watched Michael Bay and who's the guy who did The Shining? Why can't I think of his name right now? Stanley Kubrick. And so he shows up on set and he's just all dictator and all this stuff. And and all of us could tell, because all of us are more seasoned crew, we could all tell he didn't have any experience. And so, because he didn't know the lingo, he didn't know what he was going for, but he's trying to be this big, kind of director guy. And I'm just why? Why? So anyways, just not being a jerk. And I think you could surround yourself with good crew that all get on the same board with that. And then you work with the same teams over and over again. And I think that can be the idea of being a light in the film industry, is just being kind, being direct, being good at your craft. That's being a Christian in the industry, respecting your actresses and actors. It's little stuff like that I think oftentimes people think I need to come in and be this huge Christian that's proclaiming everything. And you're no, just don't be a jerk and be a good worker. And that can, and respect people. And that could be huge. So, it's the same in every job though. That's no different in the film industry than it is working in a church or working at a law firm or anywhere else. So
yeah, Ben, Lynn, and Courtney, imagine a world where everybody's set out not to be a jerk and to respect one another. Would that not be unbelievable?
Sign me up for that world.
Seriously. Hey, how would people watch Pastor's Kid? And I'll give a little free advertisement to a program that my parents have taken advantage of. They get to watch pretty much any movie they want to. They use VidAngel that eradicates all the foul language. They can even program it to eliminate all sex scenes, all violence. Like, they have complete control, so they're able to watch all sorts of movies that they weren't able to watch in the past. So, maybe listeners would need that because of the language. But how would people watch Pastor's Kid?
Yeah, so it should be up on Amazon probably in the next month.
Sweet.
I submitted to Amazon just recently, so go check out Amazon. After that, we'll be kind of on all different streaming platforms. I'm not quite sure how VidAngel works, but I know that I think you buy the movie on Amazon and then you're able to run it through VidAngel is the way it works. I've used it with my son for some of the Spider-Man movies, and that's how we've done it. So yeah, I think if you're able to purchase it on Amazon and put it through, then that works. So yeah,
awesome.
But yeah, Amazon Pastor's Kid.
Very cool. Well, thank y'all both of you. Yeah. Thank you, and congratulations on the success that you guys are seeing and doing something that you love. And I appreciate you guys giving us your time.
Dude, thank you guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. You've been listening to the Things You Won't Hear on Sunday Seacoast podcast. In the show notes, you'll see a link to our Facebook group page. Also, we'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes downloaded right when they come out. Thanks so much for listening.